Here with me for this episode is Lilith Christiansen, Chief Strategy and Product Officer of SilkRoad. Welcome, Lilith.
Thanks, Brent. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for agreeing to this. Just the other day, you and I, we had a great discussion. We discussed a lot. I think we touched on work from home, what it's going to be like as we all emerge from the COVID fog, if you will, the employee experience, how it breaks through barriers of conventional silos and talent management. Lots of interesting stuff there. And we had this crazy idea after our discussion last time that this might actually be worth putting up on an episode of HR Tech Chat. So here we are. Let's see if we can recreate some magic here. I know that why don't we start with COVID and how that has affected HCM, in terms of HCM leaders and what they're having to deal with, and how technology vendors can help them with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think every organization went through such a dramatic change last year with COVID. And, I feel like we started the beginning of the year anticipating change and thinking that it was going to be driven by AI and changes in the way that work happened, and was going to be maybe more technology driven. And then here we had this virus come in that turned the whole world on its head. And I think many look back now and think, I hate to use the overused phrases, but it really is true. Like the 3 years of transformation happened in months instead, right? And seeing the way that HR leaders and their colleagues in the C-suite really were able to come together and react to that. I think most didn't anticipate it, but being able to change the way that they supported their employees and move to more remote models and being able to enable a digital way of working. I think the piece that I guess have found to be maybe the most positive element of it was really the focus on the employee experience. And that I feel like that's something that we've been talking about for years now, or you hear companies say employees are our most valued asset, but yet what were they really doing to demonstrate that? And I feel like that's something that really came out, and you see and have heard stories of so many organizations that really that's what they started focusing on were their people, how to keep them safe. Yes, how to keep the business running and how to serve clients, but really the people came first in terms of getting them what they needed, making sure people were, felt safe, and we're all dealing with very different circumstances and children at home or sick family members and trying to work at the same time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I liken it to an HR fire drill. I mean, it was just a meet, and it wasn't just a practice run. It was a real fire. It was a fire alarm, not a drill. And it forced organizations to actually think through and execute on their rhetoric around employee experience and caring about their employees first and all about their people and culture and all of that. And it also, frankly, I think stressed a lot of those intents versus their intent versus the outcomes, which was really interesting. The 3-year you mentioned a minute ago, just not wanting to use cliches or overused terms and whatever, but I think these cliches and overused terms are really designed for a COVID moment, right? And so that's fine. And, I would use another overused term, or one that's, I think we saw an actual paradigm shift. You talk about paradigm shifts all the time. Well, was that really, this really was a paradigm shift. You think about COVID as 2020 was really a wormhole, and we're so much closer to the future of work now than we thought we would have been just a year ago, right? We would have thought, oh, it'll just be a year. We'll just be a year closer to the future of work. We're actually 10 years closer to the future of work. Now you mentioned something that was, now it's coming back to me from our previous conversation, that was super interesting, because you guys at SilkRoad are really looking at this, I think, really intelligently, and thinking about it in terms of, okay, COVID is sort of the mother of all emergencies, right? And I think you looked at some of your users, or some other users, where you wanted to see if there was any correlation between companies that had a robust emergency plan in place for HCM in general. Could you just maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, sure. What we were thinking about was reflecting on our own experiences and where we have offices and how we reacted, as well as those of our clients, that a hypothesis, I guess, really, that organizations that were located in places that had contingency plans in place for say, environmental driven emergencies, hurricanes, flood, gosh, we've had tons of fires and things like that these days too, but organizations that were located in places like that, say the Gulf Coast of the United States, that they had to have in place a plan should a hurricane come in. What's going to be our backup plan? What is our continuity of operations in order to ensure our people are taken care of and our clients are as well? And when we were putting in place some of our own procedures and thinking about how we could support our clients best, that's something that we relied on ourselves, having locations in those areas, that there was an ability to just enact it. We had already gone through the process and documenting what needed to happen when, and then even leveraging our own technology to enable that process. And so that's what we saw with some of our clients as well, located in areas like that they'd already kind of done some of the hard work, maybe for a different reason, but were able to rely on that as a starting point, or even something that got them halfway or more to where they needed to be to support people working from home, different locations, and have that continuity of operations still in place and working.
Yeah, it makes sense, and it could be that this entire episode, extended year-long episode, has taught us maybe that we all need to have a contingency plan in place as organizations, not just if we're in the Florida panhandle for hurricanes, or Northern California for forest fires, or something like this. That maybe that'll be one of the outcomes. This reminds me of of a user that we were speaking with at 360 Insights just a couple of months ago, where she was coming in as, I think, chief people officer or chief culture officer, and it was in early March of last year, and she was hired, and she came on, and immediately she became, I think, director or vice president of corporate internal communications for the firm. Like, they just needed her to be that.
Yeah.
Right away. What is, and what are some of the ways, I think, that I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on this. What are some of the ways that communication, the role of communications in the organization can work better, or actually cross-train, like actually, sort of concrete examples with HCM, because it seems to be such a natural fit, but they're separate silos.
Yeah, that's interesting, Brent. And I can feel for the woman coming into this new role, being ready to lead the people part of the business and the culture, and just the basic, almost when you think about it, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That the culture and those pieces are kind of that higher point in the pyramid, but that communication and just making sure basic needs were met, and how are we communicating that out to our people? And it's no surprise that that's how her role shifted as a result of that. And I think communication is so critical in in supporting any type of change. And what I have seen in my experience is that organizations that often have the best cultures, that their employees are highly engaged, that I actually do see the HR and the communications piece being highly integrated, that it really is something that they're, if not one and the same, really teamed up, at the hip in order to not only make the decisions that are required for people and culture, but also communicate it in a really effective way. And keeping in mind, the people absorb information in different ways. We need to hear it multiple times in order to really believe it. There's a big barrier to change just as individuals. Even if you just look at inertia, it's harder to get moving and get going. So to have a strategic partner on the communication side that can think of what are the different messages that we need to hit, what are the different communication vehicles that we can utilize, how often do we need to reinforce these same messages, I think is really critical. And probably those organizations that, as companies are reflecting now on how they did, I bet it's an easy bet that those that really focus on the communications part of it are going to be seen as having fared better from their employees.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet to make too. I totally agree with you. And I'd be really surprised if the companies that ended up sort of merging corporate communication, internal communication with HR, those where they worked more closely together by necessity because of this whole episode, I'd be very surprised that they would walk that back and then go back to separate silos. It just seems like once you come together like that, you're not going to, split afterward. It just seems that makes sense. Yeah.
One thing I was thinking of even further on that is the importance of not just cascading down the communication and the message, but the skills associated with it. Yes. I think that was probably a big shift that was required for a lot of people as managers to now, not only did they have to get used to this, like I'm managing someone, but I'm not going to see them every day. And when you're used to being able to wander by someone's desk and that was the way you could check in on them and see how things were going, or you bump into each other in the the cafe or the lunchroom in your office, that all of those opportunities for more organic communication went away. And I think there was a real need on the part of organizations to support their managers and helping them to now have more structured conversations, because that was the only way to do it, or add structure in the form of regularly having one-on-ones and helping to coach managers around, well, what should you talk about? And in fact, it's okay to spend the first 10 minutes just talking. How's it going? How are your kids? How's your family? How are you coping with this? And I think that was another win, I guess, at the end of the day, that organizations, when they focused on communication, really needed to help enable the managers in a way that they could not only carry on the message, but also elevate their communication skills to support their teams.
Yeah, because not just one-to-many communication of, corporate to the entire workforce, but it's also that peer-to-peer, manager to individual employee, or within a meeting context, communication. Absolutely, and that needs to be facilitated and as smooth as possible. Couple things. So first off, this reminds me of something that we were having a discussion the other day with another a person, and the idea came up that that some of this so there's a fine line. Some of this technology can be that's facilitating, that makes work from home possible, right? Some of it can be unintentionally facilitate interruptions, unwanted interruptions in the day. And what's the difference between being say you're in a cubicle and your coworker is walking down the hallway and pokes their head in, and maybe you're focusing on some PowerPoint and breaks your concentration. Now you've lost probably about 45 minutes worth of productivity until you can get back into the zone in terms of your focus. It's not that you necessarily are not welcoming that person saying hello and having a quick chat, but there's an analog there with say chat technology, right? Where someone might send you I mean, this is old, right? This email, right? Email can be just as intrusive, but it just occurred to, and there's one other thing I want to get to after this specifically that's unrelated, but I'm very curious what your thoughts are from a product standpoint, product design. What are some ideas that maybe you folks are thinking about around how can our technology be as helpful as possible and also as non-intrusive as possible?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think finding what that sweet spot or balance is between them is going to be absolutely critical, not only for us, but for any technology that's getting developed and being rolled out. And I think about myself, reminding myself to put on do not disturb,
Yeah.
so that the chats don't pop up, so that I can focus on, say, our conversation today, right? Or when you're engaging with folks, that you actually just totally shut down email so that you don't have those pop-ups that can distract, like that one.
I just heard, how appropriate.
Right, obviously I didn't
You
put
can't
myself
script
on
these.
do not disturb, and in fact I'll take this moment and do that right now so we don't hear any more.
That's fine.
It was as if we timed it, I think, or planned it that way. So for us, when it comes to, what are we thinking about to strike that right balance, I do think it's around being integrated with the work tools that people are using on a regular basis. So whether that means being able to engage with learning, while you're in the middle of a project and you encounter something that you maybe don't know quite where to go next, or the answer to something, just like people might go to Google quickly and do that to search to inform their knowledge base in order to kind of move forward on something, that we can do that same kind of thing when it comes to learning, and being able to access a variety of data and information that can be accessed at the moment in time where someone just needs it, that just-in-time piece. So that's one aspect that we're looking at. Another one is kind of ties to what we talked about a few minutes ago around the manager piece. And this one's very important to me, is thinking about how can we really enable the managers in a more effective way, that we're equipping them with prompts to engage with their staff at the right moment in time. So whether that's a notification that they're getting via email, or that they're getting via text or through a chat, that it's equipping those managers not only with the reminder to have a conversation, but what are the top 3 things they should cover in that conversation with their team. I think that,
sorry to interrupt, but that's super interesting. Almost like a brief, right? Because these people are super busy. If you're preparing if you're preparing a CEO for an interview with the news media, you provide them with a quick fact, like easy to digest collection of information that they can look at super quick and be ready for that in the moment, because they don't have time to really study, because everything's coming at them like a fire hose.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think managers are always well-intended around how they're going to support their teams and help them grow and develop, but they are also busy in their own work as well. So a lot of times those intentions don't match up with their actions. So I think that is a real opportunity to support managers better through technology, giving them those briefs, like you said, that gives them what they need when they need it. They're going to have a one-on-one today with a new hire. What should they cover today versus a one-on-one with a 15-year vet in the organization? Those are going to be different conversations that require different types of prompts.
Is AI part of that? Do you think AI plays a role in that?
Yeah, I definitely think it does, and that is a piece that we're further exploring, particularly for our innovation. I mean, it might not be just 2 or 3 months down the road. It might take a little longer to pull that piece.
Sure. Yeah.
Where I envision the AI helping with it would be even taking a look at the work that individuals are doing, or the collaboration that they're having on the business platforms,
Yeah.
and using those to potentially identify patterns of where someone's asking for the same type of questions or the same type of information is coming up from different pockets of the organization, and being able to utilize AI to say, oh, we have an opportunity here. 3 people have asked about communication skills in the last week. Maybe there's a real need here for that. And then being able to push something out to the managers,
To
or,
the LMS, for instance.
yeah, through the
Okay.
LMS that says, we've got this 10-minute course on communication skills. This might be good for you, or something like that. So that's where I see the AI piece coming in, is being able to identify needs and then propose solutions to it, and even deliver that, then through the technology, to the users, whether they're employees or managers or others in the organization.
That's super interesting. So just kind of, you have my mind racing here a little bit, because you think about curation. Like, curation has become sort of now it's baked into the best LMS solutions with the content that they draw on, right? There's a curation, and the curation is informed by an accumulation of data from each individual user, so it knows what to curate for each user. But this is kind of like that, but you're talking about sort of an in the moment, real time.
Yeah.
The identification of a need in real time. It's almost like, it's kind of like curation, like a one shot curation, and it pushes it out to those folks and maybe others. And you're also you're also talking about NLP in a way, right? Because that natural language processing is applied to that, company wide. So here we have, a perfect example of where a collaborative communication technology that for the entire workforce, and there's an AI or an NLP engine, or whatever you want to call it, that's paying attention to that from the maybe it's a point solution HCM application. And when you think about all the different possibilities in the future of work, it's fascinating. One thing I want to get back to in the time we have left here is onboarding, because we had an interesting discussion last time around, that, and I want to give you an opportunity to really kind of paint this picture, but just to set it up here, this idea that onboarding isn't just for new hires. It doesn't just happen at the edge of the organization when the person is first coming in. It's an ongoing thing. If you want to elaborate on that, I thought, and how it fits in with work from home and all of this new normal.
Well, thanks for teeing that up, Brent. I mean, I obviously love to talk about it, and it goes back from when we published the book, which I can't believe is already like 11 years ago now. And when, the term onboarding is, I feel like a misnomer. It'd be nice if we could go back in time and try to harness that to come up with a better term, because I think it is often considered to be just what you said. You think about just onboarding someone for the first time, they're joining the organization, and that's it. But really, to do it effectively, onboarding is so much more than that. It is an experience that supports someone entering into something new. And yes, that applies when you're a new hire into the organization, and it's getting the paperwork done so they can get paid on time and they get cleared for work. But it's also introducing them to the culture of the organization, and what does it take to thrive and be successful in that organization. It's making connections for them to the strategy so that they understand how their day-to-day connects to the overall success of the organization. It's getting them networked with other individuals so that they know, who's influencing the work that they do and how do their outputs influence someone else's. And it's the career support that needs to happen and the learning that needs to happen. And it's very obvious to folks when you just join an organization, you need all that. But when you move on to your next role, you get promoted. Well, there's new responsibilities. There's different expectations. There's new people that you need to engage with. So all of those things, again, really come into play. So what we're seeing is the most successful organizations are thinking about onboarding as something that happens at every transition point. And to take it into what we just experienced with COVID, well, we almost needed to onboard people into remote work. Okay, so what's different about our expectations now? Do we need to reestablish some working norms now that you're working from home? The provisioning pieces were even required because now maybe people had desktops or workstations at the office. Well, now we needed to get them technology, get them provisioned so they could be up and running at home. Maybe their stakeholder network is going to be different now. So it's important to introduce them to those folks. Maybe your employee resource groups actually even become more important because you need that additional network of support outside of your day-to-day workflow. And when we return to work, or those that do return to the office, we'll need to rethink that again too. Who are they going to engage with? What's different in terms of their requirements? And so it really can happen every step along the way. Even when someone leaves an organization, well, let's think about doing that in a strategic way. How do we recapture the equipment that they might have? Let's take care of knowledge transfer, and then let's set them up for success when they are alumni, that they might refer other people back to the organization. Let's connect them with a network that keeps them aware of what's going on in terms of our strategy, that maybe they become a future customer or boomerang back again themselves. Each one of those transition points along the employee life cycle is an opportunity to onboard someone into that role. And with that kind of care and attention, they're going to be more successful in the role. They're going to be more engaged, and that's beneficial to them and, of course, the organization as well.
Yeah, every time it reinforces the positive nature of that employer culture too, right? And so those folks, ultimately when and if they leave the organization, and the reality is that they will, especially in some industries. It's just but they will have a fond memory of the organization as opposed to just sort of a neutral one,
that's right.
Even a neutral one is even almost as bad as a bad one, right? Because there's no real goodwill there. It's just no bad feelings, but just nothing sort of.
Yeah.
So I think that sorry. But there's one other thing that this reminds me of that was super interesting from the last call, and it fits into this because. Yeah, what would be a better term for onboarding? And we may or may not, happen upon it in the next couple of minutes. But it also fits into employee experience, right? What's a better term? Because employee experience, I think, is better. I think we can agree. You and I think we agree, and I think others will too. There's a better term than talent management. Talent management was better than human capital management, which was better than HR. Right, in terms of really capturing the true essence of what we're trying to do in this profession. But what do you think? Yeah, what are some other terms that might be used in place of employee experience or even onboarding? Pick one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I do, as you just said, Brent, the experience piece I think is super important and is a word that I think better encompasses what we're talking about here, because to me, the experience will include the process piece of it. The experience also includes the technology that helps deliver and influence aspects of how you experience it. And it's, the onboarding piece just always seems to many times be relegated to just be that administrative pieces and the provisioning pieces and maybe orientation. But orientation is really just a moment in time, right? You can get oriented to your role and expectations, but then you're living it and experiencing and growing and developing from there. Gosh, I don't know. We're going to have to keep working on it, right? It's a tough one, but I do like employee experience a whole lot better and thinking about how to enable that experience, or
there's
activate that experience.
Activate. I like activate. Employee activation. I like that term a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then even thinking maybe it's not employee, it's talent or something else more broad, right? We have so many different types of workers these days, contingent workers and folks that are on flex schedules. I think we do want to be even more inclusive than just employee.
Yeah, activation is a good one because it really gets to the nut of it. What is that the organization and the talent both need to be successful in the next thing. Yeah, that's super interesting. Thank you so much. I mean, this has just been a fantastic conversation. I think we did recapture the magic, absolutely. And I just want to thank you, Lilith, for taking the time to join us for HR Tech Chat.
Well, thanks, Brent. I enjoyed it a lot. Hope to come back again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Would love to have you.